And all right, hello everyone. We should be live. Please refresh your pages and let me know in the chat when you can see us and hear us. So everyone watching, please do me a huge favor and let us know in the chat when you can see us and hear us. Now, I actually ask this because I had a really bad experience once upon a time. So, Kay, I'm sure you've done a bunch of live streams or you've had something like this happen. So it was one of my first ever webinars, and I thought that everything was going like really well. And then I hop back into the chat after a minute, and everyone is saying, you have not been sharing your slides. So I had been sharing like the wrong thing like the whole time and just been talking over it. Didn't. So now I always ask at the beginning, and it looks like people can see in here. So we have Brahim typing of Petra, Danny, Mara, Julie. All right. Now some of you were doing this already, but could you also let us know where in the world are you joining us from? Hi guys. Kay, for me, one of my favorite parts of doing these sessions with creators like yourself is, seeing people tune in and join us from all over the world. So I'm coming
Same.
to you from New York City, and already we're seeing folks from multiple continents. So we've got Petra from the Netherlands, Danny from Pennsylvania, USA, Mara from Bucharest, Romania, Julie from Minnesota, and we have folks tuning in from all over. So
I love it.
before we get started here, I just wanted to very quickly share some kind of important logistics. So I'm just going to share my screen with everyone. So you're going to be watching this webinar on a page that looks a little bit like this. You've got your video and you've got your chat. Now, if you're seeing anything be kind of blurry or hard to read during the slides especially, just click the settings gear, click the quality button, and make sure it's all the way to the top, 720p. And if you want to see things a little bit bigger, just hit the full screen button on the bottom right. Just do note that to view or ask questions in the chat, you'll need to temporarily exit full screen in order to do that. So for me here in New York, it's 3:02 p.m. and I'd love for us to get started. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to turn this over to Kay. Cannot wait to hear more about the Clarity Code.
Thank you so much, Cameron. Thanks for having me. I am so excited to nerd out about all things branding with you. So welcome. I won't be monitoring the chat in real time. Cameron will help me field questions for the end of our presentation. And let me get started by sharing my slides. So give me just a moment to pull those up.
And while you do that, one quick note to everyone, one question that you can ask in the chat that I will answer right now, there will be a replay. You will get a replay. It'll come to you for free via email after the presentation. So we just have some help from you in the chat. If you see someone join and say, will there be a replay? Could you just give me a hand and type, yes, there will. Cam and Kay said there would be. All right, I'll turn that back over to you.
Amazing. And if you are watching the replay, welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so honored to be here with all of you incredible humans. So I am going to be teaching you my framework for building an incredible brand that increases the demand. So as a course creator, that means you get to help more students. You see more sales. More people are coming into your orbit, getting excited about what you offer and ready to buy from you. And my Clarity Code framework is made up of 4 elements. In one misconception I'm going to bust through right in the beginning here is that branding is only logos, colors, and what you look like. And I'm actually not going to be talking directly about any of those things here in this training. I call myself the psychology-driven brand strategist because I help people build their brands from the inside out. So we're going to be starting with the inside of your brand so that you can make the most amount of impact and results in a shorter period of time than if we were just to focus on those very surface level elements. Let's dive in. To set the stage, let's see if any of this sounds familiar. So you're an entrepreneur, you're just getting started, and you're kind of intimidated, but you're like, oh, there's so much to learn. Let's go do this thing. And then over time, you find all sorts of free things like this free webinar, checklists and guides, and you feel like you're figuring things out. And then you find an expert and you're like, oh, okay, hang on, I skipped a slide. I skipped a step. So even after all of the freebies, and I hope that this isn't the experience after today, because I'm going to be sharing some very applicable action-oriented exercises with you, but often you feel more confused than ever, right? But maybe you go along after that feeling and you find another expert and you're like, yes, they know the way. I am feeling good. I'm feeling more clear. But whatever strategy they taught didn't work out quite the way that you expected, right? Like A plus B didn't equal C, and you can feel a little bit discouraged. And as you go along in your entrepreneurial journey and your sales brand building journey, you find another guru and you follow what their strategy was. And after a bit, in addition to like collecting this massive hard drive full of freebies, checklists, webinars, all of the things, and things just not working out the way that you quite wanted them to, excuse me, words are hard today. It can feel really discouraging, and you might even start to wonder, like, what's wrong with me? Why aren't I getting the results that I want? And you, instead of another route, you're like, okay, maybe I just need to rebrand. I need a new business name, a new site, new everything. And you start back at the beginning, and the process goes along in the same way. If you've ever experienced this cycle, this entrepreneurial roller coaster, if you will, I would love if you typed in the chat if you can resonate with this at all. Good news is it's completely normal. And the other good news is that you already have some of the answers. And I'm going to help you tap into some of these answers here in this training. Because the real secret is the best way to grow your brand, to define your brand, to attract an audience is to be more of you, to tap into the things that light you up, to learn what your innate advantage is, and to bring that into the world in a way that feels natural and exciting to you. And we're going to talk about exactly how to do that through this clarity code process. You might be asking, who is this nerd that is teaching me about branding? And what is she doing here on this wonderful training? So let me introduce myself quickly. I'm not going to share my entire life story. I will be sharing more stories as I'm teaching so that I can help you like soak in the knowledge into your brain, because we don't actually learn very well with just theories and ideas. We need to start to implement them and hear how other people have implemented them. But my name is Kaye Putnam. Like I said, I call myself the psychology-driven brand strategist. I have a brand personality quiz that's been taken on my site. We're going to talk more about that in a second. It's been taken over 100,000 times and is one of my favorite tools to this day to build a psychology-driven brand from the inside out. I've been honored and grateful to be behind the scenes of thousands of brands, both in my courses on Teachable here, and then also with my agency clients as well. And my official credentials, if you will, I have a marketing degree with a psychology minor, but truly I've learned the most through the school of hard knocks, or just through the experience of testing and seeing what works, and then embodying this in my own business, and then helping my clients implement what I'm about to teach you in their brands as well. I can't even count the number of courses that I've personally taken and books that I've read, because I am frankly obsessed with all things human psychology, consumer decision-making, and then how we translate that into outward cues. You might also be asking yourself, like, okay, this is great. Like, I've heard other people talk about branding. I'm a little bit confused about what it all entails, particularly since Kaye just told me it's not colors and logos. And maybe I don't need to focus on this. Maybe I just need to focus on building a great product and just putting it out in the world. But I want to confirm, or I want to reassure you that this work really does work. So when you incorporate a great brand into your product or service or course, the results snowball over time. So by implementing the same process in my business, in my course selling business, my courses have sold almost at an exponential rate over time. And 2020 isn't even over yet at the time of this recording, and we are already leaps and bounds over where we were last year. We now have over 800 paid students. I pinch myself like every day. This is bananas to me that I'm able to help so many people grow their brands. And it is truly my life's work to do this because I needed it myself. When I first got started online, I was seriously awkward. I was trying to emulate what everybody else was doing that was already successful because I thought that if I just modeled them or used them as inspiration, I would see some of the same results. Or if I followed a specific guru or expert and just followed their strategy to a T, I would get the same results. And newsflash or spoiler alert, like that didn't happen quite so easily, right? I realized that there was something underneath the marketing strategies that I needed to pay attention to. And I also had to get really clear on my own brand and who I authentically was. I think some people are born into this world with an incredibly strong and clear point of view from the moment they start talking. I wasn't one of those people. I was more of the person who was looking outside of myself for permission, looking for cues in the outside world of how I should act, how I should be. From being in high school and trying to bounce between the math counts geeks to being the captain of the cross country team, right? I was two different people in those situations. And then, like I said, I brought that into the online business world and I was trying to be other people. And people can smell that a mile away. It doesn't work to attract ideal clients when you're unsure of who you are. So for that reason, the first element of this clarity code process that I'm about to teach you is to figure out your core. Too many people start with, okay, what do I think that people want from me? Who do I need to be to sell more? But really what we have to start with is this internal certainty, this internal conviction that what we're selling is incredibly valuable and we are the best person to teach it. So we need to define who we naturally are, and I'll share a really powerful tool to help you do that. We also need to attract people on this gut, unconscious, subconscious level, because that's where people are actually making their purchasing decisions. We back them up with logic. We back them up with these, listening to these credibility cues. Like, okay, Kaye must know what she's talking about because she has a degree in marketing and psychology. She's worked with thousands of brands. But you don't get to that point until you connect on a subconscious level. And the key to doing that isn't necessarily filling out another ideal client exercise. I want to throw those across the room because they're so frustrating to me. It happens when we know who we are and stand in our own truth and our own magic. The second key to the clarity code process is to attract people into your orbit. This is a brand new way of building a brand, because back in the 1950s, you used to be able to just put an ad out onto one of the 3 TV stations that people watch if you had the budget to do so, or you were just on Main Street of the town that everybody else or that all of your customers lived in. We live in this incredible world of opportunity now through the magic of the internet, where we can reach people in every corner of the world with every different set of values and personalities and desires almost possible, right? So we need to be intentional about how we're attracting new people into our orbit and connect with them. So I'm going to teach you how to do that. Also, how to increase demand for your brand. This is one of the key tenets, because you know that a brand is working. I know that brand building can feel a little fuzzy if it's a tangible thing to focus on, but it's actually one of the highest leverage, highest ROI, return on investment activities that you can focus on, because when you do it well, you raise demand for your brand, meaning you attract a larger amount of people. And then you also, at the same time, you make them less price sensitive. So people aren't just looking for free information from you. They value what you know and they trust you to deliver it. So we're going to talk about how to influence that demand through how to structure your offer. And then the final piece of this clarity code process is actually energy. And this is a relatively new addition to me. And surprisingly, it's one that's made the greatest amount of results. I can almost guarantee that you won't find it in another how to build your brand training like this, but it's been sort of my secret sauce for the last year and a half. And I've seen even greater results in that last year and a half. So I'm really excited to share my favorite exercise in the energetic influence part of the equation. Basically, your brand's greatest asset. So you have to make sure that you, as the visionary, as the entrepreneur, you have the conditions set to be able to create success and to attract more sales. So we'll get into that in the fourth section of the clarity code. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. C is for core, aka what is your innate brand advantage? And with each of these 4 sections, I'm really excited because we're actually here on this training. So I hope you have some notebook and paper nearby. I hope that you have all the tabs closed on your computer and that you're ready to put this into work, into your brand. Because I'm not just going to be teaching you things that are nice to know. We're going to be doing some exercises right here, right now to figure out your brand. No, I'm not from Canada. I grew up in Michigan. I keep noticing my accent when I say out or about, but I've tried to get rid of it and I've just stopped trying now at this moment because it's just part of how I speak. All right, so core innate advantage, the exercise or the tool that I want to introduce to you are something that is called brand archetypes. Now, you might have heard of these before. They were defined several decades ago by Carl Jung, probably most famously. But even as far back as Plato, he's been talking about the theory of forms, which is related to this idea. More recently, there's been books written by Carol S. Pearson and Margaret Mark that talk about archetypes in relation to brand building. But frankly, it's been used as a branding tool by the biggest agencies in the world on the biggest brands in the world. And it's become my mission to help small businesses, solo entrepreneurs like you and I, tap into this incredibly powerful tool so that you can be more of yourself in your business. Because if I had a nickel for every time that somebody told me when I was building my brand that I just need to be myself, I would be much, much more rich at this moment, because back then I didn't know what that was. And through this serendipitous rabbit hole of internet links, I stumbled on a website that listed the 12 brand archetypes that I now use in my work. It didn't have any of the attribution. I found all of that later, but I had this incredible light bulb moment because as I read through each of these 12 descriptions, I was able to connect 1 or 2 of them to all of those big name entrepreneurs, those successful entrepreneurs that I had been emulating. I'm like, oh, this guy's the entertainer. This one is the hero archetype. And this jet-setting New York City entrepreneur that I love to follow, she's more of the royal archetype. So I realized in that moment 2 things. First, it's that we, as entrepreneurs, we need to elevate our brand beyond just the product or service that we're selling. We need to connect to something that's deeper than that. We need to connect to universally held human desires, and archetypes are a great bridge to make that happen. Sometimes when people think of archetypes, they just think of like color palettes or words, but they really touch so much more than that. They are these patterns that show up in culture, in movies, in the books that we read, and in the brands that we see. So what do these characters have in common? So we have Yoda, Gandalf, Mr. Miyagi, Neo. Actually, this isn't Neo. I can't remember Samuel Jackson's character's name at this moment, but all of these characters represent the sage archetype. Morpheus, thank you. Everybody else was probably like yelling it out at home. Thank you, Pam. And there's 12 other archetypes in addition to this. So as you start to read each of these descriptions of the 12 different archetypes, start to pay attention to the ones that speak to you on a really deep level, because this will give you a filter to answer that question of how do I be myself? How do I be more of myself and less confusing in the market? How can I present a message that I know is going to resonate with people because it resonates with a universal human desire, and one that's authentic to me at the same time? That is the magic of archetypes. So the caregiver archetype, you can think of brands like Tom's Shoes or Campbell's Soup. Creator is more like the Adobe Creative Suite or Legos or Sharpies. Entertainer is like Old Spice. They didn't always be the entertainer brand, but they've pivoted and made that switch brilliantly in the last couple of years. Also brands like Doritos. Explore is like North Face or Jeep. Girl or Guy Next Door is like Charles Schwab. It's a financial advising company here in the US. There's tons of examples on my site. Even I have trouble like recalling all of the examples all at once, because it's been my mission to find as many different inspirations and examples that fit each of these archetypes over time. Hero is like Nike. The Innocent is kind of like Whole Foods or like Johnson & Johnson baby products. Lover, you can think of Haagen-Dazs ice cream or NARS makeup. The Magician, Apple sometimes lives in or embodies the magician archetype. Also, there's several makeup brands like L'Oreal that have a very strong magician brand. Maverick is like Harley Davidson or Diesel jeans. Royal is like Porsche, or what is the watch? Like Rolex. And then Sage is like Wall Street Journal or Harvard University, right? So I wanted to give you an example of each of them so that you can start to see them in the world. One of the greatest gifts that I'll give you, and I'll apologize at the same time, but from now on, as you're walking through, as you get to know these brands or these archetypes, and you're walking through the mall when we're not under quarantine anymore, or if you're walking through the grocery store, as you're paying attention to these different brands, you're going to start to see archetypes everywhere. It's a blessing and a curse. But the beautiful thing is when you start to see and you start to make those associations, you can get inspiration from other places other than your immediate industry. So you don't just have to look at other course creators or other people in your direct niche to get really great on-brand inspiration that you can bring into your business. So our first exercise, excuse me, is to identify a primary archetype and a secondary archetype. Sometimes you can do it intuitively just by reading the descriptions, but if you do want help after we complete the rest of this training, because we're going to move on here in a second, you can head over to my website, which is kayeputnam.com, and you can take the quiz that is available on my site. I always like to tell people you have veto power as well. So sometimes you'll get answers on the quiz that you're like, I don't know if this is me. So definitely dive in, use your intuition on which ones you'll ultimately use to help build your brand. Okay. For the sake of time, we're going to keep moving. I'm going to introduce an exercise in each of those. So the first one was to identify archetypes. The second for O is to increase your brand's gravity by paying attention to the orbit around your brand. The old way, like I said, back when there were only 3 TV stations, was to just put ads out in front of as many people as possible. And lo and behold, people would buy. And that was that. There weren't very many choices, and customers weren't as, they weren't like as discerning at that moment because they didn't have that many choices of products. These days, choices are almost infinite, and people demand that the brands that they buy from are ones that they resonate with on a values level. And since you have already identified your archetype, or you have that values piece figured out, and now we need to create the rest of the ecosystem around your brand to make this work. These days, instead of just this transactional relationship that we have with products, with customers, with courses, we are now building relationships. And that's how we build the know, like, and trust factor that I'm sure you've heard is so important. It's also how we create a pricing advantage. Because if I had to pay for every customer or every conversation that I had with a potential customer, that would get really, really expensive. It's out of touch. It's out of the budget for most solopreneurs like you and I, or even people that have small teams or even really big teams. If you're smart and you want to increase your profitability through the way that your brand works, we want to nurture the relationships that we have with ideal clients over time, so that even if somebody's not ready to buy, the moment they come into contact with our brand, they stick around because there's a reason to. So let's take a look at this ecosystem. And the goal, the exercise that I'm about to share with you, is that we want to create, or we want to pick just one strategy from each of the 3 phases. So we have attract, nurture, and serve. Now, since you're here with me in a Teachable webinar, you probably already have this serve part pretty well taken care of, because Teachable gives us incredible like drag and drop sales pages that you can create. And you have these courses that either you've created already or you plan to create. So that's how you're going to serve people. Now ask yourself, how are you going to nurture or attract and nurture them as well? Because we need to have strategies in each of these phases. One of the ways that I see brands go stagnant most often is because they're too focused on maybe 1 or 2 of these phases, and they're ignoring at least one of them. Attract is similar to the olden days when we had to rely on advertising, because we still have to get in front of new audiences. But thanks to the internet, there's now more ways other than advertising that you can get in front of new people. I am living and breathing an example of this right now, because I am teaching to an audience that's related to Teachable. It's not just my audience, not just people that know me already that are here watching this training, this masterclass. And other ways to do this would be to speak on stages, to get interviewed on other people's podcasts, to build up your body of work online so that people find you through search. It's super easy to get overwhelmed with all of the options. So my goal here is to help you hone in and just give you permission to release all of the shiny objects and just choose one per phase. So as of this moment, I have 2. So I'm do as I say, not as I do, but I've been in the online world for over a decade now. I started my first business when I was a wee 16-year-old, and was one of the, I've always loved online marketing. It's been my zone of genius for a really long time. But even to this day, I'm focusing on 2 attraction mechanisms, and I only focus on one at a time. So it's either other people's audiences, so doing as much speaking like this as possible, and then I do run ads as well. But if you're just getting started, if you're just implementing something for the first time, just start with one. Second, which is the new phase in here, is that we need to nurture the people that come into contact with us. So we have to indoctrinate them into our brand. And actually, in the next part, in building demand, I'm going to share some topics that are important to speak to people about. So the way that we nurture and the way that we deepen the relationship after somebody has this passing encounter with us is that we offer more value for free. This is beautiful because the internet can be kind of a low trust environment, right? We can find, or like basically anybody can start a business, which is a blessing and a curse because it allows us to get into business. But at the same time, who knows who else is out there, right? So we need to demonstrate our credibility and we need to connect with humans before they'll be ready to buy from us. The way that I do this is 3 ways. Again, if you're just getting started and building out this ecosystem, choose one. But I have a brand quiz. So this helps people by giving them an insight into their brand. It's a tool for them to use. I also nurture people and build a relationship through email marketing. So after they opt in to my email list, I send a series of emails that helps them get to know me and to solve some of their early problems. And then also you can think of your social media content or your blog content in this phase. So we want to, again, we want to go first. We want to remove the risk from buying from us so that once we get to that sales conversation, it's essentially a no-brainer. You've already bought into the expertise and the point of view of the person that you're learning from because they've put the time and effort into creating free content. And lastly, that serve, we already touched on it briefly because Teachable makes it so easy to build sales pages to facilitate that sale and to help people through our content and our courses. But other ways you can do that is a masterclass like this one, or you can have sales calls, or some people will have conversations in like the DMs of Instagram or a social media platform. That's just where you're going to make that ask, like make that offer. If you need to solve this problem, here's what I have to help you. So break out that note paper or piece, whatever you have in front of you, moleskin or scratch paper, whatever is perfect for you, and draw 3 categories and start to pay attention where you're light or where you're heavy. Maybe you're spending all of your time nurturing a small audience. So like all of your time is spent on creating new social media content, but you realize that you're not spending a lot of time and effort in the attraction phase. Like you're not making a intentional effort to get in front of new audiences enough to bring them into your orbit to continue to nurture them, right? Or if you're like some other people and other students that I work with, maybe you're great at creating free content, not so great at asking for the sale. So you might want to start to build some intentional systems in that serve category that are going to convert people from the free content into the sales content. So that can look many different ways. Again, don't get overwhelmed. Just pick one strategy. Maybe that's a webinar. Maybe it's a free challenge. Maybe it's getting on stage and then making a pitch at the end. There's many different ways to do this, and none of them have to be overwhelming. And implementing all 3 stages of this system is magical. It creates that snowball of results that we saw in the beginning that I've seen with my course sales. So when you have all 3 of these working, your brand is actually drawing people into you like a system, like without you having to hustle for every single sale or to feel like you're going out and chasing people or convincing them to buy your courses. Amazing. All right, on to step 3 of the Clarity Code process. And this is some more of the practical work of building a brand. It's deciding what you're selling and why they should buy it, and who you're selling it to. And just as a side note here, all 4 of these sections have many other pieces underneath it. I wanted to make sure that I was teaching at least one impactful exercise in each of these pieces. But if you want more support, and if you see that we're getting some quick wins, but you want to dive deeper and you want some more support with that, there's a button available to buy my full Clarity Week process, which has in-depth lessons on all 4 of these phases. So if you already know that you want more support, you're ready to dive in head first, definitely check out that course because it's going to give you in-depth training. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that later, but I wanted to acknowledge that I realize we're moving fast. Like I'm giving you as much, I'm trying to over deliver as much as possible and giving you as much as possible. But for many of you, you'll be ready to take the next step once we get through these exercises. All right. I love this quote from Seth Godin. He says, "The reason it seems that price is all your customers care about is that you haven't given them anything else to care about." And that one kind of like hits straight to the gut because it can feel like, oh, everybody that is online, they're just price shopping and I can't raise my prices. But you can, so long as you shift the conversation. And we've already talked about some powerful ways to do that in the C, that core of who you are. And then this piece is the other piece of the puzzle, what you're selling and how you're talking about it. So on that piece of paper, on Wherever you're doing the work here, I'd love you to write out these 5 blocks and start to brainstorm what they are for your offer, for your course, your service, whatever you are selling. Let's talk about how to elevate the sales conversation above just the price. And I'm going to give you an example from my own brand to make this clear in just a moment. So the 5 questions that you want to ask yourself is, at the center, what is the immediate problem that you're solving for people? If you're selling an art class, maybe you're helping them feel more connected to, or just like to de-stress, to play a little bit more. Or maybe your positioning is a little bit different. Maybe you're teaching an art class to other artists who are going to monetize that skill to earn more money or to sell more pieces of their art. There's all sorts of problems that we can choose to sell to. Did that make sense? Maybe not. There's all sorts of problems that our products exist to answer. And even having a similar product as somebody else, you might exist to answer a slightly different question. And this is part of the positioning piece, because you're going to talk about, like the example we just said, you're going to talk about that art class that's just for fun much differently than the way that you're going to talk about the art class that's teaching fellow artists like a monetizable skill, right? So that's the first question to ask. Second one is, what is the opportunity cost, or what does it cost if somebody doesn't buy what you're selling, or if they don't solve the problem? This one like hits deeply, like directly to my heart, because when I think about people that are stuck in the fuzziness of not knowing what their brand is, so much so that they're not bringing their work out into the world, I realize how much the world suffers when our genius is all stuck in our brain. So I am here, I exist to help more entrepreneurs serve the people that they're meant to serve and to sell the things that they create, because I know that the world would be a better place when they do that. I also know that one of the things that's driving me is I want to prove to my kids, because I have 2 kids, we're like straight up in elementary zone here in the Putnam Casa. I want to show them that you can essentially design your own job description, that you can do something that you're passionate about and that it can be successful. You don't have to follow the same route that everybody else does to have a really successful career. And I know that for the people that I'm teaching, they want to do the same thing for their kids. So if they're not getting their brand out into the world and attracting the clients, then they're missing out on that opportunity as well. So it's not so much that we want to like find a place to like stick a dagger in and twist it to make people feel bad, but you can really start to appreciate the value of what you offer when you recognize the flip side, when you recognize what happens when people don't take time out of their day to let loose and to play and to tap into their creativity. That might seem like a superficial thing on the surface, but when you really drill down, you realize that we're all super stressed. I mean, particularly with the year that 2020 has been, I think selling or like tapping into things that are creative and fun for you, things that your 7-year-old self would love to do, is crucial. It's like saving my sanity at this moment. So what is that opportunity cost? Also, what emotional need does your product, service, or course solve for people? For me, I'm giving you a sense of power, a sense of confidence, and the peace of mind that comes with clarity, because it's no fun to be spinning in circles. It's stressful to be overwhelmed with all of the options. And it's also really discouraging to not see the results that you want to see with your brand. So I'm selling those emotional needs through teaching you about branding. On the flip side, what is possible when people do buy your course? What transformation, what outcome is available to them now? And then lastly, even if you're in an industry or you sell something that nobody else sells, you have quote unquote no competition, I guarantee you, if you look back at that center, what immediate problem do you solve? There's other ways to solve that same question. So for me, my core question that I exist to help people solve, that I've been answering for myself over the last 20 years, is who am I really and how do I express that in the world? So if I think about that question that I'm helping people solve, they could solve it by going to a psychiatrist or a therapist. They could solve it by working with a copywriter. They could solve it by working with just somebody who focuses on design. There's all sorts of ways to solve that problem, but I can speak directly to why my course, my solution is so powerful. So for me, that looks like the fact that so many other options are either not focused on business, so it's not something that creates a return on investment, or some of the other business tactics that you can do to solve that problem and to express yourself in the world is based on trends, or it's based on things that are surface level instead of this deep inside out work that we need to do to attract clients on this emotional gut level. So I hope that you're starting to see, I hope that you're starting to fill in these boxes to elevate the conversation around your brand so that you can start to connect with people on a deeper level than just, here's my course. It adds 7 modules that will teach you how to do X, Y, and Z, without acknowledging and helping people see the greater context within their world. This is really, really, really powerful. Once you do this exercise, just to kind of fast forward into your future, take a look at your sales pages. Take a look at the content that you're sharing, that nurturing content, whether that's an email or Instagram or wherever you're showing up, and make sure that you're answering these questions or being very clear about sharing these ideas with the people that you're speaking to, because these are the things that are going to help them feel that urgency to solve their problem and to know that without doubt, you are the singular and best choice for them. Just take a little deep breath here as we're moving into the E of the clarity code process. I appreciate you guys so much. I'm so excited that you're here with me, spending time improving your brand, upgrading what you're doing. It is I love to teach, and it's so fun to be here sharing particularly these 4 things, because these are the 4 things that have made the biggest impact in my business, like I said. And this idea of energetic influence is one that I rolled my eyes at for a long time. I hated to hear anything about mindset or woo or anything that seemed weird or unconventional. And lo and behold, surprise, surprise, I've been finding some of my best results in actually focusing on how I'm showing up as a human, as the entrepreneur that's driving my business. And I realized this is actually right on target. It answers that core question: who am I? How am I going to show up? Or how am I going to express that in the world? I can't do any of this. I can't create the content. I can't be my most shining, sparkling self. And I can't help entrepreneurs if I don't have any energy. So energy really is at the foundation of this entire equation. And I have a quick story and a little bit of a theory that I call the spiral theory, because everything in life is constantly changing. Like our atoms are moving all of the time. And similar to like riding a bicycle, like we can't just stay in one spot, we fall over, right? Like you have to have forward movement. But the tricky thing is that sometimes that movement is spiraling up and sometimes that movement is spiraling down. There is no stuck. And I realized this very acutely about a year and a half ago. We were moving. So my family had been moving around the world, which was an incredible experience. My husband's job had us moving every 2 years, and we had recently come from Italy, living there for 3 years. We had a pit stop in Minneapolis to stay with my sister-in-law, who graciously let our family crash at her house while my husband found a job. And then we had moved to North Carolina, where I am now. And in this process of moving, we were living out of a hotel room with our 2 kids. And I realized that I was taking these daily actions. I was doing things that weren't in service to who I want to be. We were eating out for every meal. We were, having pizza by the pool. I was drinking a few too many wine coolers down by the pool. We weren't sleeping as much as we should. We weren't working out. Like all of these things start to build up and compound over time. And these decisions I was making were compounding in a direction that I did not want. So I realized that something had to change. And I also remembered, I had this another epiphany moment, much like finding the archetypes. I realized and I remembered back to this incredible experience that my husband and sister-in-law and I had, where we trekked to Everest Base Camp about a year prior to that. Actually, not even, it was like 6 months prior to that. And the one thing that really stuck out from that experience for me was how slow we walked. So it was just like this plodding cadence that we walked up this mountain up to Everest Base Camp. And almost so much that I was getting impatient. I was like, let's hurry this up a little bit. Maybe we don't have to stop for tea at this tea house. Maybe we can just keep going to the next one. But I mean, lo and behold, after this experience, the whole trek took about 14 or 15 days, and we covered over 70 miles at that excruciatingly slow pace. But the reason we were able to do that is because we were moving in a focused direction, and we kept taking consistent intentional action. We had this Sherpa that was guiding us in the right direction. So I had this aha moment. I'm like, oh, I've been taking baby steps in the wrong direction. So like none of these activities in of themselves are going to make or break my day. But when I make them over time, it's like this downward spiral into depression and lethargy and feeling crappy about myself. So I flipped the script. I designed a set of, and this is what we're going to do in this exercise. I designed a set of silly, simple daily actions that I could take that I knew would take me in the other direction, in the upward spiral. So these were really easy things like moving my body for 10 minutes or drinking a liter of water before I had caffeine. So hydrate before I caffeinate. Publishing something every day, even if it was just my breakfast in the beginning of this quantum quarter that I dubbed this my quantum quarter, because I knew the power of compounding actions, compounding baby steps. And I had this whole list of high leverage habits that were just really easy to complete each day. And I hate even saying this because it sounds like clickbait, but over these 90 days, I had my first $50,000 month in sales, which I had never even gotten close to in the past. I had other big months of sales. I lost 20 pounds. It was like this infomercial of results that I created just by focusing on these simple daily actions. And I want to encourage you to do the same. So the way that we do this is by paying attention to the types of activities that create deposits, energy deposits in our life and in our business and in our brand, the things that drain us in those areas as well. And then a little bit of an X factor is to think about the resources that we have. So we might all have the same number of hours in a day that Beyonce has, but sometimes other people have more resources. So they're able to hire out so that they can use less of their own energy. So create a list of 3 on your sheet there that we're implementing what we're learning, and write your own list. So for me, I realized that moving my body made me feel good. Eating clean food, not drinking wine. Actually, the wine went in the drains list, but dressing up, like not wearing pajamas every day when I'm working from home, being outside, etc., etc. And it's just about being intentional about subbing your drains for deposits. And I promise you, even for those that might be skeptical, I promise you this has incredible results for building your brand. Because as entrepreneurs, we need to show up, we need to teach, we need to share, we need to build our body of work. And none of that is possible unless you have the foundation, if you set the conditions to actually be successful. And then another great thing to take into account, like I mentioned, aside from the deposits and the drains, are your resources. So you have access to courses like this one that you're watching right now to help energize you, to give you momentum, to steer you in a focused direction that's going to get you results. Maybe you've purchased courses in the past, or you're going to invest in my Clarity Week course that I'm going to share with you. Maybe you have coaches, or maybe your family helps you. Just realizing how many resources are available to you can be a really great perspective shift to recognize how amazing life is and how much results that you can create with when you tap into all of these resources. I love the book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. One of the quotes from that book, or maybe just from his blog, he says, "You choose the future with your actions each day." Another way that he says it, which I absolutely love, is you vote for the type of person that you want to be with your habits, with your actions. So what are you actually doing on a daily basis that's creating your business? Are you publishing content? Are you making offers? Are you showing up? Are you selling? Are you taking care of your body? All of those things. To recap, these are the 4 exercises that created the most leverage in my brand and my business. What is your innate advantage? AKA, what are your primary and secondary archetypes that you can use, that you can leverage to be more of yourself? If you don't take anything else away from this training, I want to encourage you to be your own weird, amazing self. Whatever that version of geek or freak that you are, that is what magnetizes people to you. And there's a bunch of other exercises aside from the archetypes that I do teach you in Clarity Week. Second is O, orbit. So what are your 3 strategies to attract, to nurture, and to serve? D, how can you make your offer even more irresistible by answering those bigger questions? It's things that go beyond the features of what you're selling or just the surface level benefits. How are you actually impacting people's life? And then E, what are the actions, the little daily baby steps that you can make to set the conditions to make your success inevitable? And just a moment of reflection before I tell you a little bit more about Clarity Week is, how will a clear and compelling brand transform your business? What would it mean for you if sales are just showing up almost like magic? What would it mean if you got invitations to speak and to collaborate with your peers? Or if you get mentioned by other people when they're talking about whatever your area of expertise is? How would that benefit your brand? And when you get really clear and really grounded in how amazing that is, it's motivation to implement these 4 things that I taught you, right? Like these 4 things that can make this amazing difference in your business and in your brand. We're going to answer questions right after I share this little information piece. This little pitch here for this course is super short, so we're going to get to questions right after this, but let me share a little bit about what Clarity Week is. We dive into each of these 4 sections, so the CODE, plus a part about transitioning into implementing all of the exercises that you learn in the course into your brand in day 5, which is called your brand future. Each of the days includes about an hour-long course or hour-long class, and then there's also recorded Q&A. So I taught this class live, and I'm in the process of editing all the videos, so it's a little bit cleaner of a video, but you get access to all of it, plus tons of free bonuses and resources that are applicable to each of the different sections. A 70-page workbook so that you can implement everything that you're learning. And then at the end, there is a proprietary brand assessment that you take to help you identify which phase of brand building that you're in so that you're focusing on the right things at the right time. So this course is all of my best work. I created it just recently in the last couple of months. So it's all of my most up-to-date and most proven methods for building this brand that attracts your ideal clients to you. And over 200 students have taken it so far. I think we're probably up to 250 at the time of this recording, and it's gotten rave reviews. It's well over a $197 value, but you can enroll today for just $97. So relatively small investment to create this incredible impact that you're meant to create in this world. And I am so excited to welcome people into this Clarity Week process so that you can see some of these results for yourself. So thank you so much for having me. I love, even beyond Clarity Week, I'd love to connect across the interwebs. Like I said, on my website at kayeputnam.com, you can take the brand archetype quiz. I'm also on Instagram and on YouTube with lots of free content as well. But I'd love to open it up to Q&A and answer any questions that you have about the content that we covered and or about Clarity Week, the course.
All right. So I'm actually just coming out and unmuting my microphone there. So I'm seeing a question in the chat here from Hector. And Hector asks, how can I start to apply these frameworks for a service-based business?
Ooh, that's actually how I got started with all of these frameworks. So I used the context of courses because we're on a teachable webinar here, but these frameworks can all be applied to either product-based businesses like retail and e-commerce, and to service-based businesses, and to really big businesses. So in the case of the archetypes, it's about discovering who you as a service provider, what your archetype is, or if you happen to have a corporate brand with a team of people that are executing whatever the service is, it's about figuring out, typically it's based on who the founder is, but sometimes you can take your leadership team together to take the archetype quiz together, for example, or just have a discussion about how you want your brand to engage with people, what the personality of your brand is, and choose it based on that. The beauty is there's no wrong answers. So whenever you're leaning into any of the archetypes, you're going to be connecting with people on a deeper level than just your service. So yeah, it's completely applicable to all of them, to any type of offer.
Well, I'm actually seeing a pretty good question come in here from Billy, and this is about the course. And Billy says, what kind of results have your past customers gotten? And I'm assuming when he says past customers, he means folks who've gone through the program.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, I mean, I can't guarantee any results because it depends on what stage of business that you're at and how experienced you are, all of those good things. But I've had previous students of this course, and this is relatively new. So I will never ever promise like instant overnight success, like going from 0 to hero in a short period of time. And because we just taught this, we don't have tons, but let me give you some examples. So I've had students that have like literally secured clients during this week of courses that they didn't expect to get by implementing what they're learning. I've had people in some of my longer courses or over a longer period of time double their previous year's income. Our goal is to attract more people and to make more sales at the end of the day. And that's what focusing on your brand can give you when you implement it.
So I'm seeing a question here from Jonas. And Jonas says, can you explain to us a bit on how you made these decisions, but for your own personal brand?
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of places that I can go with this. So let me choose one. So the archetypes were a lot about how I was showing up. So for a personal example, when I was first getting started, I mentioned I was super awkward. I opened my website with this very feminine, flowery, like, hey, bombshell type of language. I was also producing a weekly video on YouTube that was called Your Monday Morning Kick in the Pants. And then at the same time, I was trying to be funny, even though I'm not really a great joke teller. I'm not naturally funny. So I was trying to be all of these different archetypes. And when I honed in on what my primary and secondary archetypes are, which are the magician and the sage, no surprise here, I love teaching. It gave me permission to like let go of some of those things that weren't authentic or weren't natural for me. And my business has just grown exponentially as a result because I feel comfortable in my own skin, who I am now. So I think that's a really good example of how I applied it.
Now, we have a pretty interesting question here from Mandy. And Mandy says, how do you decide if a business just isn't working and we should focus on something else? So if you're trying and trying with branding, when do you decide that, hey, I should be trying some other business?
Ooh, really good question. I would spend a lot of time in that demand section that we talked about, whether it's this free masterclass or if you invest in Clarity Week to get more in-depth support, but really focus on elevating that conversation about what you're selling. Oftentimes people are trying to sell something that people don't really want when they're in that situation, or they haven't made it clear to their audience about how your product or service is going to improve people's lives. So make sure that you're using language that your ideal clients recognize and they already desire. So people already desire confidence. People already desire clarity. They have told me that language in like my sales calls, in the conversations that I've had with people. So that's why I'm reflecting that back to people in that demand language. So I would start there and make sure that you're doing a really great job. If it's still not landing, I would go back to those conversations and ask yourself, what does my ideal client want? Or what problems do people have that I can uniquely solve for them? And maybe shift either your messaging or the offer itself to better fit that.
So we're at the hour here, so we'll probably take one last question. And while we answer this, I would just love if everyone could just type into the chat to thank Kaye for spending the time with us today to really teach us something new and dropping a ton of knowledge, and not to mention a great deal on her product. So I see the last question here. I'm going to use Andy's question. Andy says, I love James Clear. What kind of habits have you started or formed, I guess, that have been helpful in building your biz/branding?
Mm-hmm. I'm obsessed with James Clear. He's a genius in my mind as well. So it
Also,
came
a
back
fellow
to
Teachable customer, I might add.
oh, is he really? He's amazing.
Yeah,
I'm like a fangirl, and it's terrible. I quote him all of the time. So
Habits
when I was
Academy.
what was that?
The Habits Academy. Check it out.
I love that. I will have to check it out. So when I was designing my quantum quarter and I was looking for those high leverage habits, I just started with the smallest habits possible. So my current list right now is 1 liter of water before coffee, 3 liters of water total, move my body for at least 10 minutes, even if that's just going outside and walking, publish anything anywhere. And then a really fun one is I try to make an upgrade to either my life, my business, or my day every single day. So it might be really small. It might just be calling a friend to like make myself smile, or it might be actually updating a page on my site or some asset in my brand. And I know that if I make just tiny upgrades every single day, it's going to have an incredible snowball effect. So there's some examples that I've incorporated into my life and business.
And Kay, looking in the chat here, we've got all these folks chiming in. We have Andy, Julianne, Deborah saying things like, I'm inspired. Thank you, Kay. Thank you, Kay. This was super helpful. Petra says, you've got a great energy and are really inspirational, which is so nice to see. So Kay, before we wrap this up, any last words for folks? Where can they find you online, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I'm easy to find. I'm a good online marketer. So if you search for Kaye Putnam, I think I show up in all of the places. But other than that, I just want to encourage everybody to keep going. Like I said, I'm here to help people get their genius out of their brain. And sometimes it takes some perseverance and just sticking with it. And I hope that you do, because I truly believe that entrepreneurs can change the world with what they know. And I'm so excited to see how this helps you grow your brand and reach more people.
And all right, and with that, I would love to say thank you also to Kay, and as well to everyone joining us for giving us your time generously and coming to learn something today. So you'll get an email with a replay, and be sure to check out the special offer for this course. It's really not one to miss. All right, thank you so much everyone for joining us. Take care.